Welcome, everyone. Yesterday we were learning about the Constitution, which is our plan for how our government will work, the foundation for the different roles and jobs within the government, and how we create laws and all that. Our big goal was to learn about separation of power. So, what is separation of power and what is its purpose? Separation of power is when you split up the power. Instead of all the power going to one or two people, it goes to large groups of people. And different groups have different jobs, like the legislative branch, job is to write laws, executive branch is to carry out the laws, judicial branch is to judge the laws. And the purpose of this is to prevent tyranny, to stop the abuse of power, limit how much power individuals have, you limit their ability to abuse that power. Here we have a cartoon. And we got representation of our different branches of government. So obviously the tree represents the government, and it's got three major branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. And we got this guy up here with a saw chopping off branches. To think about our history a little bit, this character is supposed to be Obama. Also says it down here: Obama's separation of power, his division of power. And so according to this author, he is trying to criticize Obama as trying to take away the power of the legislative and judicial branch. Obama was the president. He was part of the executive branch. This author is arguing that he's taking away powers from these other two branches and keeping it all for the executive. This is a negative depiction of Obama. There's this belief that Obama used a lot of what we call executive orders. He bypassed Congress and he bypassed the judicial branch to get what he wanted. And whether that was good or bad, he was breaking the system. And the system has this division of power for a reason, to stop tyranny. And they'd argue that Obama was going too far down that line of tyranny. He was abusing his power. Today, we're going to talk about another system of separating power. Instead of into branches, we're going to separate into what we call levels. We call this system federalism. It's when you separate power between the federal, state, and local governments. So here in the United States, we have like the national government in DC with Congress and the president. We call that the federal government. National and federal are basically the same thing. We also, every state has their own power. So like the state of Colorado, we have a governor, we have a state Congress, we have state courts. And then local would be like county or city. So we have like mayors, city councils, city judges. So wherever you are in the country, you have a national government creating laws and protecting you and should be looking out for you, but you also have a state government doing that and local governments doing that. Now, each one of these different levels have different powers, different things they're supposed to be doing. And they're all broken up by the branches of power as well. So we're really trying to separate power as much as we can. And a reminder, anytime you see federal, that's talking about like the national government. That's what we're talking about. So with each level comes certain powers to do certain things. Now, the actions are the same, and they're still creating laws, enforcing laws, interpreting laws, but it's the type of law. Like what sort of categories are you allowed to make laws in? There's certain things the federal government can do and certain things state and local governments do. The only thing the federal government's allowed to do is what the Constitution specifically says it can. Now, over time, the federal government has overstepped that and done a lot more, some good, some bad. But there should be this balance between the federal government and then the state governments. They should balance out. We don't want either one of these having too much power, because once one of these levels has more power, they start to abuse it. So some examples, you may know that Colorado is one of the few states, well, there's a lot more states offering it now, where marijuana is legal. You go to Nebraska, you go to Kansas, it's illegal there, right? Because the federal government, the national government, doesn't have power over that. Each state has a power over what products are allowed to be sold and which ones aren't. If you want to look at this visually, this big square, or I guess rectangle, represents all the power there is in our government. Well, we want to split this power up. If one person has it, that's too much. So we split them into branches, like we talked about yesterday, the legislative, executive, judicial. These people write the laws. They enforce it, they judge it. So we got three different branches. That separated power pretty good, but we want to separate it more. We're going to separate it into levels. So in theory, when it comes to the power in our government, it's split into at least 9 different sections. Now, they're not always equal. Right? Sometimes a state gets a little bit more powerful or the federal government gets more powerful. Right? We always have to check and make sure that these 9 different spots of power all have some influence and control. None of them should be too powerful or too abusive. Another way of looking at it is that the national government and the states should sort of balance out. There should be equal power. Now, the state of Colorado doesn't have more power than the national government, but all 50 states added up should be equal. All right, we're going to watch a video that sort of represents this idea of federalism. You can pause this video and watch along. Just like yesterday, we are going to do some trivia. I'm going to show a power, and I want you to predict, is this a federal power, a national government power, power left to the states, or is this a power both can do? So for each one, on your whiteboard, you're going to tell me federal, state, or both, and then we'll keep track and give out some extra credit. Your goal today is to read about federalism. We're going to identify, level 1, identify some strengths and weaknesses. We're going to work on explaining cause and effect, and look at some compare and contrast. As always, if you need help or have questions, let me know.